They are whitewashing Cleopatra, or are they? Gal Gadot has been cast in the role of Cleopatra, and Cleopatra was from Egypt, but Gal Gadot is not, and a lot of people are up in arms about it. Let's have a little look at the headlines. We've got the first one from The Guardian. Casting misses chance to give North African actors a high profile. I should do it like Paul Joseph Watson when he does his terrible impression of what he thinks liberals sound like. Prolonging the debate over Hollywood's colonization ethnicity. I hate it when he does that. It's very demeaning, isn't it? He's come a long way, has Paul Joseph Watson. I remember the time when he would be calling out the atrocities in Gaza. He certainly doesn't seem to do that anymore. But going back to The Guardian, traditionally a left-wing newspaper, a liberal newspaper you might say, they're talking in terms of Hollywood's colonization of ethnicity. So is it racist to cast a woman as Cleopatra if she's not the exact ethnic makeup of that historic figure? And this has come to light recently. And funny enough, when the biopic about Queen was made and Freddie Mercury, they didn't choose someone of Freddie Mercury's Parsi background to portray him. They chose an Egyptian actor. And to portray an Egyptian, Cleopatra, they haven't chosen an Egyptian actor. So maybe they're sort of sharing it around and then someone else will get the role. I don't know. But let's have a look at another headline. Gal Gadot's Cleopatra film sparks whitewashing claims. Plan for a new movie about Cleopatra sparked controversy. Yeah, so whitewashing is this idea that many figures throughout history that would have been of a different race are portrayed as white people. Probably the most famous example being Jesus, who came from the Middle East. And the most famous portrayal of him, I think, is by Robert Powell, a blue-eyed Northern European. And it's very doubtful that Jesus would have looked anything like him. But let's have a look at another picture here. Woke warriors outraged over Gal Gadot being cast as Cleopatra because she is not black, are ridiculed for not knowing the Egyptian queen was Greek. Right, hold on a minute. Was Gal Gadot, who is from the Middle East, not cast as someone else from another part of the Middle East? We're homing in on things now. Cleopatra was apparently of Greek heritage. Now, the Greeks spent a long time in Egypt. Ptolemaic civilization, there it is. So obviously Alexandria is named after Alexander the Great, who was either Greek or Macedonian, depending on who you speak to, but he certainly wasn't African. And this Greek civilization that spanned the Eastern Mediterranean, North Africa, all the way up into Afghanistan. And the city of Kandahar is actually named after Alexander the Great. That's how great he was. So Cleopatra, although having lived in Egypt for quite a few centuries, I think. I mean, how long do you have to live in Africa before you are considered African? And when we think of Africans, for some reason we tend to conjure up the image of sub-Saharan Africa, where the black population originate from, but there are vast areas of Africa that are not white and are not black. North Africans are a mixture of Arabs who are an invasive species, aren't they? They are settlers that came from the Middle East and came to North Africa, bringing with them their language and their identity. You've got what you would call the original inhabitants of North Africa, the Berbers or the Amazigh or the Tuareg, and some of them look very fair-skinned like Europeans with blue eyes, and some of them look very dark-skinned like your so-called sub-Saharan Africans. So it's very difficult to decide who are the native population of an area like Egypt that's had so many civilizations. And even if Cleopatra was of a completely Greek heritage, after 200, 300, 400 years, however long her ancestors had been living in the land, do you not think there would have been some intermixing along the way? And this notion of a white race is a modern concoction anyway. It's a modern invention. The ancient Egyptians wouldn't have described themselves in such terms. But there's the extent of the Greek legacy in Egypt, which lasted quite a long time actually, and there were many Greek Egyptians. Here's one famous such example. Rajib Pasha was a Greek who was abducted as a child and enslaved and converted to Islam. He later served as Prime Minister of Egypt. So who said that slavery was bad or it never did anything for anyone? There's a Greek chap who was enslaved, forcibly converted to Islam and taken to Africa. I think he was born in Greece and taken and enslaved, taken to Egypt, and grew up in Egypt as a Greek Egyptian and was forcibly converted to Islam, unfortunately. But he ended up being the Prime Minister, so, you know, every cloud. And who's this chap? Here's another Greek Egyptian. This is the philosopher and economist Yanis Varoufakis, whose father was from Cairo and part of this long legacy of Greek presence in Egypt. And the native inhabitants of Egypt, if anyone can lay claim to it, are the Coptic Egyptians, whose community is surviving. They're down to about 10%, I think, of the 80 million or so Egyptians that we have in Egypt today. But they would lay claim to the original identity of what it means to be an Egyptian. Egypt, Copt, giving us the English name for Egypt. In Arabic, they refer to Egypt as Misr. So it's a place that has had many civilizations come and go, many racial categories of people living there. But this racial category is a modern phenomenon, and we tend to think of Greece being in Europe, a member of the EU, therefore Greeks being a European people, but there has been an extensive Greek civilization outside of Europe, and the people living in the Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire, which became the Greek Empire, would have been Greek in the sense that they spoke the language. They might have embraced the Greek Orthodox Church religion, but it doesn't mean that they are a monolith. Just as in the Roman Empire, most Roman citizens were not Italians. They were other ethnicities that had adopted the language and become part of the Holy Roman Empire. This Greek Empire would have had many different ethnicities within it. And I think it's slightly incorrect to assume that Greek equals European equals white. Perhaps Cleopatra was fairer skinned than some Egyptians. We know that in the south of Egypt you have Nubians who are black Africans essentially. You've got Saudis, you've got different ethnic groups that all form part of the same nation, and at different periods of history there would have been more of some than of others. But it's interesting that people like Varoufakis have a claim to an African heritage. And if you look at somewhere like Cyprus, a divided island that's been in the news a lot recently, the people in the south who speak Greek, practice Greek Orthodox Christianity, are referred to as Greek Cypriots as opposed to Turkish Cypriots. But really, probably they share a lot of DNA with the Turkish Cypriots that have lived on the island for centuries. It's not like no mixing ever went on. And because of the Ottoman Empire's millet system, people had an ethnicity ascribed to them based on their religion, which is why you ended up, when the forced population exchange between Greece and Turkey happened, people of pure Greek ethnic origin speaking Greek as their first language were expelled from their homes and sent to live in Turkey because they were regarded as Turkish simply because they were Muslim. And it went the other way as well. People that would have been Turkish speaking, Turkish culturally, who practiced Eastern Orthodox Christianity would have been regarded as Greek and would have been sent to live in Greece. So this is the problem when we try to attribute our modern understanding of identity, race, religion, ethnicity to a period of time in the past. It doesn't always match up. And there are still villages in Syria full of people that describe themselves as Greek Muslims. They are ethnically Greek. They speak the Greek language, although it's dying out apparently, and they've kept in touch with their Greek heritage via satellite TV, and they're watching Greek television all the way out in the Middle East. But because they are Muslims now, they have been regarded as outsiders when they've tried to go home and visit their homeland in Greece, which is kind of sad. You'd think we could have got beyond all that by now. But there's no doubt Cleopatra, from the name, we can tell she was of a Greek heritage. Whatever that meant back then, it's not the same as being a member of the EU and having a European passport in the sense that we understand Greek to mean now. We're talking about the greater Greek nation, the greater Greek civilization, which, as I said earlier on, spread as far as Afghanistan. So she was of Greek heritage. She would have spoken the Greek language. But I think there are questions over who her mother may have been. I'm not sure if it's the mother or the father, but there's certainly a possibility that she may have been half local, native Egyptian, whatever the ancient Egyptians looked like, and we don't know the answer to that yet. So on the one hand, fair enough, she had a Greek identity, but we can't extract anything about what she might have looked like because of that. In the chat, we've got Owen Keeling mentioning the Berbers, and Hedwig Wendell Crumb is saying, please read out my comment, bro. He's begging me to read his comment. No problem. So going back to what we came here to talk about, the Greek population at the time in Egypt would have been not completely monolithic. I'm sure there would have been interaction with other ethnicities. It's like if you go anywhere over hundreds of years, do you not think somebody somewhere along the way will have had an illegitimate child? There are people around today that claim they're part of the royal family, yet they haven't been accepted because they were illegitimate. But I probably can't talk about that without getting sued. But if you are arguing that after 200 years, 300 years, you are still Greek, and by the same token, to bring it back to Gal Gadot, who has been cast in the role of Cleopatra, although she is from the Middle East, we know that her immediate ancestry lies in Eastern Europe. I think she's of a, forgive me if I'm wrong about this, Lithuanian background, but essentially she's Eastern European. We know that she's Ashkenazi, to give the specific ethnic group. So is your argument that no matter how many generations Gal Gadot has spent in the Middle East, she's not Middle Eastern yet because her ancestors were in Eastern Europe? I mean, how many generations does it take? If you're born in Britain, you're British, aren't you? But is race something else? Is ethnicity something else? Is DNA something else? And a lot of people are very obsessed with it at the moment, and they're doing these 23andMe DNA tests. Other tests are available. It's kind of like the coronavirus test, but instead of putting it up your nose, you put it in your mouth, apparently. And you can find out where your DNA came from. Maybe if Gal Gadot did a DNA test, and they do these in some countries, in some places, with regards to whether or not they let you become a citizen. And this is what's known as having a strict ethno-state. But what if Gal Gadot's DNA threw up some results that said she was from ancient Egypt? And studies have been done on that Ashkenazi ethnic group that show they share common ancestry with the Mizrahi and other ethnic groups from that part of the Middle East. So if you go back far enough in Gal Gadot's DNA, I am certain you will find she had some heritage not too far away from Egypt, just across the Nile. And if you went into Cleopatra's DNA, I don't know, have they got Cleopatra's body? Was she mummified? Can we clone her? If you were able to get hold of it, I'm sure you would find traces of ancestry from a similar region. But I don't think it's as simple as that. I think it's something that, as usual, has been politicized, maybe for no good reason. And it's interesting that it's Gal Gadot and it's where she is from that is in question. I wonder, would we be as quick to question the casting of a so-called white person if it were an actress from somewhere else? Or would we be even quicker to question it? Let's say it's not perfect that Gal Gadot has been cast as Cleopatra, but is that better than say, I don't know, Catherine Zeta-Jones? Where's she from? Who's a young current actress? You can tell I've not watched a film for a long time. But who would be more appropriate? And have we got any examples here? Let's have a little look. Oh no, we haven't got any more pictures. There was an Egyptian actress from about 100 years ago, maybe less, who was of a Greek background. And it's sad to see that this thriving Greek community in Egypt has pretty much dwindled away. They've gone to live back in the homeland, like Varoufakis's father came back to Greece, and I think that's a real tragedy. And the final remnants of this great Greek civilization and this Greek culture outside of Greece are alive and well in Cyprus, although they've suffered a lot. Imperialism has cost them dearly, whether that's the Ottoman Empire or the British Empire or modern attempts at Turkish imperialism. They are right on the brink of it, and I feel for them. And I think it's very sad when countries become monolithic and these minority communities are swept away as a culture dominates. Wouldn't it be great to go to Egypt and mix with people that speak and read and sing in Greek and have been doing so for hundreds of years? And the small community in Istanbul, or Constantinople as they call it, they're a remnant of the great Byzantine Empire's past. And when I was in Syria, I wish I had had the time to seek out one of these Greek villages where the people, although they are Muslim, speak Greek and watch Greek TV. And apparently, unlike a lot of, or some of the Muslim neighbours, these Greek Muslims always practice strict monogamy. This is a relic from their history sometimes that they've clung on to. In the chat, we've got Hedwig Wendell saying a black actress could not play the Queen of England. What if she put on white makeup and kind of did a David Walliams in reverse? Owen Keeling is saying, I think Halle Berry would be a good pick. No reason really why movies should be picking actors based on characters' race. Just pick a good actor. Yeah, if we could see beyond race. I get what you're saying about Halle Berry being a good Cleopatra. Although apparently Cleopatra wasn't actually that attractive. This is the thing. Our concept of who or what Cleopatra is probably comes from Carry On movies or whatever you've grown up with. It's going to be completely off from what she really looked like. The same with Jesus. We're bombarded with the image of Jesus looking like a blonde European. Even if he had dark skin in some of the portrayals of him, he's shown as having long hair for some reason. But they did some DNA reconstruction of what the average person looked like in that part of the world around that time, and he had quite short hair and he didn't look like anything much. But what was special about Jesus, I don't think, was the way he looked. It was the way he behaved, the way he interacted with other people. And even in a religion like Islam that is completely against ever drawing a picture of any of the prophets, in the stories and in the hadith and in the traditions, you do get an impression that the prophets are being described as very, very good-looking men. They were all men, I think, although some people think that perhaps the Virgin Mary could be considered a prophet. But generally, they are described as being handsome, for want of a better word. And I think when we really love someone, we're biased in favour of them, aren't we? And we want them to not only have had great character, but also have been great looking. Now, they may or may not have been good looking. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and beauty standards have changed throughout history. So what was beautiful 1500 years ago might not be now. Or am I wrong? Is attractiveness something universal? Some people will tell you it is, but certainly if you look at art, there were periods of time when being quite fat or overweight was regarded as attractive. Not so much now, although I think it's coming back, isn't it? Beautiful at any size. In the chat, Bill Fence is asking, if race doesn't matter, just stick to the ethnicity of the character and don't change their race. Fair enough. I mean, are ethnicity and race interchangeable? Are Greeks all the same race? You've got fair-skinned Greek people. You've got dark-skinned Greek people. If you look at Italy, for example, in the south of Italy, in Sardinia, the people almost look North African, and in the very north, they almost look Germanic. You've got lots of blue eyes and blonde eyes. So it is being the same ethnicity the same as being the same race? I don't know. We sort of use these terms interchangeably, but I guess ethnicity is a more precise description, but in many ways it could be more variable. Owen Keeling is claiming that there is no such thing as race. Well, you know, is there such a thing as nationality? It's something we've invented, but it exists, doesn't it? It's a reality in our world. It affects us. But they do say that race is a social construct, but that doesn't make it any less real, does it? There are things that are socially constructed that are real. And some people say gender is a social construct as well. Hedwig is saying, yes, get rid of the concept of race and ethnicity and there will be less division. Yes, probably, but then we'd find something else to fight about, wouldn't we? If we didn't have race or ethnicity, we'd fight over football teams or something. So let me know in the comments, what do you think will happen with this? Will it do terribly at the box office? Will they have a change of heart? Does it really matter? Owen Keeling is saying everyone in the world except the Far East and very isolated tribes are direct descendants of Ramesses the Great. Common ancestry theory. There you go. And wasn't Ramesses Egyptian? Aren't we all slightly descended from an ancient Egyptian? And Hedwig is saying we all came out of Africa. Yes, if you believe the out of Africa hypothesis, then we all came out of Africa. But I've heard other theories on that one. There's a new theory, the out of Australia theory. Food for thought. Very good show on the Kev Baker show about that. They had a very good guest. Well, look, thank you for joining me. This has been Lessons for Life, talking about ancient Greece, talking about racism, all sorts of things. Join me again tomorrow when we will be talking mixed martial arts. Something for everyone. It's been Lessons for Life. We'll do it all again soon. We were here and we're gone. Latest.